This was supposed to be a routine political interview, but within minutes it stopped being policy and turned into a political detonation. One question about strategy, one answer about survival, and then she said it. At the center of it all, Pauline Hanson doesn't just talk politics. She goes on the attack, tearing into the direction of Australian leadership and the state of the system itself. What starts as party strategy explodes into a wider accusation of collapse, division, and political failure. Then comes the line that cuts through everything, calling Anthony Albanese the worst prime minister I have ever seen. But this isn't just an insult. It's a signal flare for something bigger. Power, identity, and trust in politics are all on the line. And once that moment hits, there's no going back.
Preferences haven't gone our way. We've got the Labor, the Greens, these other organisations out there, left-leaning, small organisations that are flowing the preferences away from One Nation. The polling shows us that in some rural and regional areas, we're polling as high as 40% of the vote. Now that will win us seats, by all means. But like I said, it's 2 years outside the election. We've got a lot of work to do. I've got to put out my policies to prove to people that we can do it. We do have the answers to a lot of problems that we have. So don't mistake what I'm saying. I intend to go for it. I'm not going to sit back on my laurels and see this country go down the drain as it has under, there's no leadership. Albanese is the worst Prime Minister I have ever seen. There's no leadership in the Liberal Party. They're fighting with each other, which makes me so mad in the state of the country.
What's your take on this heated exchange? Who made the strongest point? Drop your thoughts in the comments and join the conversation.
The country, they're all, no, I want to be leader, I want to be leader, I want to be leader. And there's no leadership whatsoever. And I called it out with Leigh last year. I don't see her as a leader. She doesn't enthuse me. She doesn't give me confidence. I don't believe she knows what she's doing. And as you said, Rita, those laws that were passed, I picked it right from the very beginning. They should never have been passed. And yet they went ahead with it. Why? To be seen. You can't just be seen to be doing things. People want leadership. People want strong decisions. And they picked it wrong. Very wrong.
Rita.
We haven't really had a true centre-right conservative option for a number of years now. I know traditionally you lot haven't always got along, but can you see One Nation and the Nationals, now that they've broken up with the Libs, getting together, having that infrastructure across the country and perhaps being a coalition, a true conservative coalition?
Rita, I'm not going to rule anything in or out. As far as I'm concerned, I'm not going to take on another organisation, another party, where you're going to have, factions or infighting. I built this party so we don't have any of that. And that's what we need in this country. I'm not going to say that you're going to disagree on policy, where we go with this, where we go with that. If people come across, it has to be to One Nation. I'm not going to, I haven't taken years out of my life to rebuild this party a second time for those people who had their own agenda, wanted to take over, which they did. Where are they now? All gone. I'm still standing. So I'm not going to allow my party to be taken over by those. People have joined One Nation, support me. They didn't come on board One Nation to support the National Party. So it's about, the Conservatives need to get our heads together if we want to defeat the Labor Party and the Greens that are destroying this country. I don't have an ego, but I am determined to make it work.
What unfolds in this interview is more than a routine political exchange. It is a layered reflection of growing tension, frustration, and competing narratives inside Australian politics. At the center of the discussion is Pauline Hanson, who uses this platform not only to discuss party strategy and political positioning, but to deliver a far more forceful critique of the current direction of the country and its leadership. The conversation begins with seemingly technical questions about political expansion, alliances, and whether One Nation could strengthen its presence through cooperation with other conservative groups. But even in these early moments, Hanson is already shaping a broader narrative of independence, control, and resistance to political fragmentation. As the discussion develops, the tone gradually shifts from organizational strategy into direct political criticism, and this is where the key turning point emerges. Hanson expands her argument beyond party mechanics and begins describing what she sees as systemic failure across Australian politics, pointing to division, lack of direction, and weak decision-making at multiple levels of government. It is in this context that she directly targets Anthony Albanese, labeling him as the worst prime minister I have ever seen, and accusing the broader political environment of lacking genuine leadership. This statement becomes the emotional and rhetorical peak of the exchange, condensing a wide range of frustrations into a single figure and transforming a complex political landscape into a simplified narrative of failure. However, the interview does not remain limited to personal criticism. It expands into a wider argument about national identity, political fragmentation, and institutional instability. Hanson also emphasizes her refusal to merge or dilute her party's structure, presenting One Nation as a disciplined and unified movement resistant to internal conflict, which she contrasts with what she describes as chaos and infighting in other political forces. As the discussion continues, the rhetoric intensifies further, moving into themes of national unity, cultural division, and public dissatisfaction, where political critique blends with emotional framing about the direction of the country. The result is a narrative that positions current politics as disconnected from public sentiment and increasingly shaped by symbolic gestures, ideological conflict, and leadership struggles rather than effective governance. From an analytical perspective, the interview is not just about one leader or one policy disagreement, but about how political messages are constructed and amplified in modern media environments, where strong language, personal attacks, and simplified explanations often become more influential than detailed policy debate. Whether viewed as a legitimate expression of public frustration or a strategic political framing designed to mobilize support, the exchange highlights a deeper issue at the heart of contemporary politics: the growing gap between institutional leadership and perceived public trust, and the way individual figures become symbols for much larger systemic debates.